This is what turns light into an image inside of your camera. And you've probably looked at your camera sensor a million times, but have you ever wondered why it's so, well, green? I mean, not just kind of green, but unmistakably green. And this isn't a design choice or a branding thing. It goes much deeper. It goes way deeper than that. And if you find yourself sometimes blaming your camera gear because you can't quite get the images you want, it could be because you don't understand how this mostly green sensor sees the world. Now, most camera sensors don't see color in the way we do. In fact, without a little bit of help, they don't see color at all. They're just little squares of silicon that measure the amount of light that is hitting them. That is it. Less light, more light, no colors, no hues, just brightness. So how do we come up with these vibrant sunset shots or photos of our golden retriever's beautiful golden coat? That's where something called a Bayer filter comes in. It's like a little mosaic of colored filters placed right on top of the sensor. Each tiny square on your sensor, which we call a photosite, is covered with either a red, green, or a blue filter. And when I say mosaic, I don't mean randomly scattered colors across the sensor. It's a very specific pattern. Half the squares are green, a quarter are red, and the remaining quarter are blue. That's a 2x2 pattern, red-green on one row and then blue-green on the next. And this setup is called the Bayer pattern. It's named after Bryce Bayer, who worked at Kodak, and he came up with this process. And if you're thinking, hey, Will, hold on a second here, why are there double the amount of green filters versus red and blue? Then you're asking exactly the right question, and we're going to get to that in a second. But first, imagine this pattern of filters as being like a tiny series of stained glass windows. Light comes in, it hits the colored filter, and then only that specific color of light passes through to the sensor. So a green filter lets green light in and it blocks blue and red. A red filter only allows red light in, and so on. That way each photosite ends up only measuring one color of light. Now, with all that being said, it's entirely possible that if you look at your camera right now, the sensor behind your lens might not be absolutely, entirely, 100% all that green. It might even be a little bit bluish. And that's because even though everything that I've just said is 100% true, there are likely a few layers of glass sitting on top of the Bayer filter that can protect your camera from all kinds of things that we can't even see. For example, if you see a blue tint to your camera sensor, it's because of pesky infrared light. And here is why. Most camera sensors, including the one in your DSLR or your mirrorless camera, they are highly sensitive to light that goes beyond the visible spectrum. Specifically, in this case, infrared light. Now the thing is, our eyes can't really see infrared light, but your camera sensor can. This means that your camera is picking up all kinds of wavelengths that you don't want to be messing up your photos. So to prevent this unwanted light from messing with our images, camera manufacturers put a IR cut filter in front of our sensors. This filter blocks out most of that infrared light. So that's why sometimes your sensor can look a little bit crazy and like a kaleidoscope when you shine light onto it. Some of the light is getting absorbed by all the different layers and all the different filters, and some of it's being reflected right back at your face. And Fujifilm sensors can look even greener than traditional Bayer setups because Fujifilm use what they call the X-Trans layout of photosite pixels. X-Trans sensors have a unique 6x6 pattern of photosites, and Fujifilm claims that this layout can increase the perceived resolution of the images that come from the X-Trans cameras by eliminating the need for a low-pass filter that would otherwise be sat in front of the sensor. So now that we know why sensors appear mostly green, why do camera manufacturers use these Bayer or X-Trans layouts in the first place? So without getting too scientific, inside your retina, in your eyeball, you have 3 types of cone cells that respond to different wavelengths of light. Short, which is blue, medium, which is green, and then long, which is red. But here is the twist. The majority of the cones in your eye, around about 2/3 of them, are tuned to correspond to green light. The reason for this is that green light contributes roughly twice as much to our perception of brightness compared to red or blue light. And for the way human eyes and brains work when we're trying to process a scene based on the amount of light that's hitting our eyeballs, brightness is the most important element of that versus color or any other things that our eyes could pick up. And so if we translate this over to an image sensor, allocating more photosites to green produces a far better looking image than if each color were allocated equally across the sensor. So if the green filters on top of our camera sensor across different parts of the sensor are giving us the brightness of different parts of the image, the red and the blue filters on your camera sensor provide chrominance, the color difference information. In simpler terms, they give your image its color, green provides the image its structure. And all three filters are necessary, red, green, and blue, for your camera or your editing software to go through the process of demosaicing. Demosaicing is the process that your camera or editing software goes through to transform this raw, green-heavy image and turn it into something beautifully fully coloured. Remember, each photo site only sees one colour, and so a green pixel knows nothing about the red or the blue light that might have also been hitting that photo site. To deal with this, software demosaicing looks at the pixels around a specific pixel to try and estimate what the actual colours in the scene may have been. It's like asking one of your neighbours what's going on in your own house because you can't see inside. And this isn't guesswork, there are algorithms involved, some simple, some incredibly complex. The most basic version of this looks at red and blue pixels near a green pixel and tries to average them all together to get an estimate of what actually was being observed in reality. This works well in areas with smooth colour transitions like skies or a plain coloured wall, but as soon as there is an edge, or a sharp colour change like a black sign on a brick red wall, things start to get messy. The camera might interpolate across the edge rather than along it, causing weird effects like colour bleeding or strange grid patterns, and this is also where you get the infamous moire effect, or otherwise known as those weird rainbow coloured lines when you shoot something like a patterned shirt or some kind of fabric texture. Now, to avoid this and some other weird artifacting effects as well, advanced demosaicing algorithms try to identify edges and then only interpolate along the edge itself. They might also assume that some color ratios stay consistent across areas of an image, so if there is a green to red ratio in one corner, it might be in the other corner as well. And finally, you might be thinking, hey, I do film photography and my colored film isn't green. What's up with that? And to my eye, camera film typically looks a dark brown in colour. Well, this is because film has layers of emulsion which record the red, green, and blue layers directly. Similarly, Sigma have actually produced a fancy sensor in the past called a foveon sensor as well. Now, this foveon sensor has 3 layers of photosites stacked on top of each other, each collecting a different wavelength of light. The signals from each wavelength are then processed and transformed into a specific one single RGB colour per pixel or photosite. It's pretty cool technology. Will we see more foveon cameras in the future? Who knows, but the technology behind it is pretty cool. And with that, if you want to continue to level up your photography knowledge, why not click the video that's on the screen right now.